listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, who will lead the Liberals after the party's worst election loss in almost 80 years? As the broken party tries to rebuild ahead of tomorrow's crucial vote, we speak with political expert Kos Samaras, who warns if the Liberals don't undertake a dramatic overhaul, they will be obliterated from political history. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Monday, the 12th of May. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced his new ministry with a record number of women joining cabinet. Michelle Rowland is the new Attorney General, with West Australian Anne Ali taking up the small business and multicultural affairs portfolio. Tanya Plibersek has been controversially dropped from the environment portfolio and moved to social services. The PM today defending the move.
So how did Tanya Plibersek take being given the social services portfolio, and did you give any consideration to shifting Chris Bowen?
She was very positive about the portfolio, and no.
Jim Chalmers will stay on as Federal Treasurer, Katie Gallagher will stay on as Finance Minister, and Penny Wong as Foreign Minister. Meantime, David Littleproud will remain leader of the Nationals after he was challenged by Matt Canavan. Mr Littleproud was elected leader after a private vote in Canberra, with Kevin Hogan voted as deputy leader. And more bombshell claims from within the Liberals ahead of tomorrow's crucial leadership vote. Angus Taylor has denied new claims by outgoing Liberal Senator Holly Hughes that he was plotting to replace Peter Dutton before the federal election. Supporters of Mr Taylor, who has put his hand up for the leadership, have reportedly labelled the new allegations as, quote, out of control. Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the embattled Liberal Party with political expert Kos Samaras. The former Labor Party strategist turned pollster says none of the current candidates vying for the Liberal leadership are the right choice, adding the broken party needs a complete overhaul if it's ever to win back votes. Kos, thanks so much for joining us. What are your thoughts right now with this leadership tussle with the Liberal Party?
In a bit of a bind, no matter what the result. I mean, both candidates occupy regional Australia, or their electorates occupy regional Australia. They belong to a political party now that only has 10 seats out of 80 odd that are metropolitan electorates in this country. When we remove baby boomers from the equation, their primary vote in metropolitan Australia is almost down into the teens. So it's basically they're having a contest as to who gets to hold the poison chalice.
You make a great point there, because there has been a lot of speculation that whomever takes over as the next Liberal leader is actually going to have a poison chalice. They have a very, very difficult job, not only to try and reunite this broken party, but try and get their policies front and centre. Do you think whoever is voted in as the new leader, it will just be a temporary position?
I think inevitably we're probably at least one or two new leaders or leadership contests away from them resting on someone that may be palatable to modern Australia in 2025 and beyond. I mean, they talk about they need to, reconnect, but they've never actually connected to the type of voters that we are seeing are creating these type of results. Unprecedented results where Labor secures a 34% primary, no different to 2016 result for them, but they pick up an extra 20-odd seats to what they got in 2016 with the same level of support.
Because just on that point, it's a great point you make, because a lot of people have said the Albanese government, the Labor government, won the last federal election, but you mentioned they got the same primary vote they did in the last election. So really it wasn't a win for Mr Albanese. It was actually just a win for preferences going to Labor.
Yeah, I use the 2016 result as a good contrast to that, because they picked up 69 seats back then. And at this election, it looks like they're going to secure well in excess of 90. And it's the other vote that's creating this, as in Australians who vote for other minor parties and candidates, independents. And they are now the king and queen makers of our parliament going forward. They clearly preference Labor in very significant numbers at this election. Our analysis suggests that at least 72% of these Australians are millennial or Gen Z. So again, it's this generation, this emerging generation that is really piling into that other category, and they are shaking the cage.
So what does that say moving forward? Because what's going on with the Liberal Party right now, one may argue there is a whole generation of voters that are never going to vote for the Liberal Party.
No, that's right. This is fundamentally their challenge. They keep talking about maybe if we ran different policies or if we did X, Y and Z, that's fine, but these Australians that we're talking about have actually never voted for them. They were contemplating, a portion of them were contemplating voting for them before the actual election campaign kicked off. And that election campaign kicked off in early March, really. And before that, there was a portion of them that were parking their intention on the coalition. They're not really paying much attention. The minute it went from a referendum on the government to then really a choice between two, a lot of these younger Australians just took one look at Peter Dutton and ran the other way into the hands of minor parties and the independents.
So was it more about we just don't like Mr. Dutton as a leader, or was it a combination of also the policies? Because we know the coalition made some critical errors, especially when it comes to younger generation Australians. Nothing to do with HEX. The Labor government got onto that quite quickly. And working from home was a big blunder for so many young Australians right now. That is the only way forward.
The best way I can describe young Australians' attitude towards the country they live in, the society they live in, is they don't want governments punishing other Australians to fix a problem. So, for example, whether it's the work for home policy, where they were obviously going to promise to push Commonwealth public servants back to the office. Many Australians didn't hear the Commonwealth Public Service section of that announcement. They just thought they're going to push everyone back to the office. Then also the 41-odd thousand public servants that they promised to sack. Now, that's not really the sort of policy you want to take to a country that's just survived a pandemic, an inflationary crisis, feeling really bruised. And in particular, it's not the sort of policy you want to take to a generation that is emerging that wants to see something other than Australians getting beaten up by politicians.
So in light of that, and that is the vote that the Liberal Party, the coalition, needs to basically get over the line, what does the Liberal Party need to do with its leadership? Who do you think, considering they need to get that vote, the best leader is?
The best leader probably needs to be a millennial. Perhaps understand the wants and needs of these Australians, and needs to understand that they are going to have to appeal to a country that is a lot more diverse than it was 20 years ago. At the close of this decade, in just Victoria alone, combined there will be close to 1 million enrolled Chinese and Indian Australians. Now, the Labor Party secures a very significant number of support from this particular community, and unless they turn that around, they're not going to win many seats in urban electorates, in particularly Sydney and Melbourne. So they're diverse, they're highly educated. So again, millennial women, close to 50% of them have got a tertiary qualification, as bachelor degrees or above. And we know that the coalition only secures 1 in 5 of those Australians. And it drops even further when we go into Gen Z. So it's looking pretty grim.
So talking about looking pretty grim, if you look at the front runners right now for the crucial vote for the new Liberal leadership, we've got Angus Taylor, we've got Susan Lee, we've got Tim Wilson is a possibility, and also now Jacinta Price. Do you believe none of those candidates is what the Liberal Party needs right now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, if you look at the way they conducted their politics, some of them live in some conservative echo chamber that doesn't exist in this country, obviously inspired by what they see in the US via Trump. Others, are more traditional, I would say hard right conservatives. It's just not the type of person you would expect a modern political party to be putting up as leadership material. Now, having said that, we have seen in the past where people have got a particular persona, public persona, and then they change drastically when they're given a leadership position. So I wouldn't completely rule out every one of them, but it's going to be pretty hard.
One may argue all of those candidates surely have teenage or adult children. Why are they not listening to what those children think the nation should head towards?
Look, they should, but unfortunately for the political class, having children is one thing, but understanding the culture and the world in which your kids' generation are living in and growing up in is vastly a different challenge. So I think that's, I've not seen any evidence that coalition in particular actually has wrapped their heads around this problem.
So, Kos, in light of what you've said, do you think the Liberal Party is going to be extinct if they go down this same path?
They do not change. They're running out of demographic tarmac. So again, as I touched on, if we remove baby boomers from their metropolitan vote in Melbourne, their vote goes into the teens. If we remove baby boomers from their Sydney vote, it's in the low 20s. And the reason I say if we remove baby boomers is because it's the only demographic that they are winning. Every other demographic, diverse Australians, Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z, urbanised, highly educated constituencies, diverse constituencies and so on, they are losing massively and they have to do something quite drastic to win them back.
As we know, to have an effective democracy, it's important for all Australians to have a great opposition, whether that's a Labor opposition or if that's a Liberal opposition. How devastating do you think this is for our democracy to have such a broken party right now that doesn't seem to be clear in its direction?
I think there's a silver lining, and that is those who voted for other parties and independents are so big now and so instrumental in determining results that I think our democracy is actually now a lot healthier. That means the incumbent Labor government that just won 90 plus seats knows that there is this great big mountain of voters out to their flank that could easily turf 20 of their MPs out the next election with just a changing of preferences. And not necessarily change the government, but definitely make things quite uncomfortable. And we've seen that happen in the past. We've seen it with the election of independents, but also, Daley's just been re-elected in Fowler. This is, again, historic seat, which Labor used to hold. But I think that the group of Australians now, I think it's about 4.5 million of them who voted for other parties and independents, I think are a good sort of stimuli in making sure our democracy works well.
You're someone that crunches the numbers, analyses all of the figures, and you have your ear to the ground about what voters want and how they're voting right now. What would your advice be to the Liberal Party right now?
Absolutely reform yourself in terms of what you think conservative politics should look like in 2025 and not 2005. Pitch towards small business. A lot of the Australians that we're talking about, in their 40s, 30s and 20s, work for small businesses or run small businesses. We have the two large diasporas, which I touched on, which is Chinese and Indian Australians, who are wealth accumulators, conservatives in terms of their social views, aspirational. These are the sort of constituencies they should be securing quite comfortably, but they don't. They will have to abandon their rhetoric around immigration, and they'll have to become a lot more tolerant. There's a number of challenges in front of them.
We appreciate your analysis today. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers.
That was Kos Samaras. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss our episodes or our deep dive of the day. You can also follow us on our socials, on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. You just need to search Listener Newsroom. That's spelled LISTNR. And we'll be back in your feed tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.